You can listen to the Canadian Gothic early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
Hi, Jordan. This is Lindsay, sending a message from Kenora, Ontario. Love the show, and every time I listen, I think about sending a voice recording to talk about the 1973 bank robbery in Kenora, and so this is me doing it. This story has been told in my family quite a bit because there's a smidge of a connection. I guess my uncle at the time was quite young, and everyone lined Main Street to watch this ordeal unfold. And my uncle was lining the streets with everyone watching. And as this man exploded, a chunk of his flesh landed on the woman beside my uncle. So that's always the story that comes out when my family talks about it. But I know it was quite the ordeal.
You are listening to Canadian Gothic.
Hello, listeners. Tonight we're going to explore one of Canada's most bizarre mysteries. It's one wrapped up in a shocking crime that became a public spectacle. It all happened in Kenora, Ontario on the afternoon of May 10th, 1973. A man walked into a CIBC branch carrying guns, duffel bags, and 6 sticks of dynamite that he had wired to a device clenched between his teeth. For over an hour, a standoff would play out inside the bank as a crowd of Kenora's residents gathered outside, their attention fueled by the radio station across the street whose announcers were providing live play-by-play over the air. But this isn't the story of a daring arrest or takedown in front of an appreciative public. This one ends in the most shocking way possible. Over 50 years later, no one knows who the would-be robber was or why he chose Kenora to do this. To help us explore it all, I'm going to be joined by Jack Luna, the host of the Dark Topic podcast. And together we're going to take a trip back to 1973 and join that crowd on the street watching along for the Kenora Bank Robbery Explosion. Let's get into it.
It is one of Canada's most bizarre mysteries. An armed robber almost pulls off a heist in a small town bank until a dramatic incident that leaves 1,000 spectators horrified.
Jack Luna, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Before we introduce you and talk about what you've been up to over on Dark Topic, I want to talk to you about special drinks. I was at the mall today. I got an A&W cream soda. I love this kind of thing, and this is going to make the talk extra special. Let me take a quick drink.
Yeah.
Ooh, you got something fancy in your hand. What do you got there?
Well, it is, first of all, I want to say, is that zero sugar?
It's zero sugar, yeah. I'm watching the waistline.
And A&W is naturally no caffeine as well, right?
Yeah. Well, root beer is no caffeine. Cream soda is no caffeine. So that is a guilt-free drink that I have.
Yeah, it's almost like a health drink. Besides what it does to your stomach.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I'm drinking a Dab. And Dab is a German beer that is available at my local pharmacy for reasons unknown to me until recently. I asked, why is this Dab in high demand here? And they said, the Hutterites and the Mennonites who live out here, they like to drink this beer. And they're all of like German, Dutch descent.
Okay. Now, I've never seen that before, but what's shocking me is, did you say you bought it at a pharmacy?
Oh, yes. So out here, they sell beer at the pharmacy in Manitoba.
Okay. Because they don't do that in Nova Scotia. No, I've never heard of that, of all places.
Yeah. Well, the bar out here burned down a couple of Christmases ago. And now they have to sell all the beer at the pharmacy.
Okay, so the bar burnt down and the pharmacist stepped up and he's like, I'm dishing out the fentanyl and Oxycontin. I might as well carry the German beer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad you got something special. Longtime listeners of Canadian Gothic will recognize your voice. We've collaborated several times in the past, but for people new to the show, how would you describe Jack Luna? Because you'll do it much more gracefully than I would. I would tell them to look away.
Yeah, you always say stuff like that, which I appreciate. I do a podcast called Dark Topic where I cover the world's darkest stories while wrapping the listener in an itchy blanket. That's the way that I describe it. I just basically do true crime. Initially, I wanted to do Dark Topic as a way to cover things like heists and robberies, like we're going to cover today, and all kinds of dark things, but it all kind of comes back to true crime for me. There's just so many stories out there. So Dark Topic has given me a way to write. I've always wanted to be a writer and work off of real material, being real world events. And I just can't stop doing it. I've been doing it since you introduced me to true crime through listening to nighttime podcasts back in 2015. I think I started
Wow.
listening to your podcast.
Time flies, man.
Yeah, and I started in 2017. You were my favorite podcaster, still are.
Wow. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. And you're mine. Well, let's get into it here. We're here to talk about a story you did cover on Dark Topic a couple of years. How long ago was it that you did an episode on the Kenora Bank Robbery / Explosion?
Yeah, I did it in August of 2024. I called it The Dead Man. And I was on a trip back to Ontario from Manitoba, where I live. My dad passed away, unfortunately, and I was going on that trip to go see his house and meet his friends and stuff like that. And along the way, I stopped in Kenora, which is about 4 hours away from me, and I had to write the trip off, to be honest with you. So I was looking for crime cases along the way.
And of all places, and Kenora's a small little town, so you're probably like, man, it's like there's probably some guy, and someone must have killed someone here.
Had to have been, right? Well, most of northern Ontario, there's not much going on, but in Kenora, this had gone on.
Hell yeah.
So I stayed there for a night and a day and walked around the area and got to know the streets and avenues and buildings that we're about to be speaking of.
Yeah, it is a crazy story. I knew a little bit about it. Like I knew something crazy happened. There was a bank robbery gone wrong in small town Ontario. But it wasn't until I really started digging into past articles and documentaries about this case that I realized, like, geez, like I'm shocked that everybody doesn't know this. Because for one, it's an amazing mystery of who this guy is, but it's also such a spectacle. It's the most, bizarre thing to happen in the middle of the day basically in town square with half of the community showing up to watch this whole thing go down. Because this isn't like a regular bank robbery. It so happens that the bank was like across the street from the radio station.
Yeah.
So as the robbery was happening, the radio station announcers were just looking out the window, reporting on it, telling people, don't come down here. And of course, everyone's going to go down there.
They all came down.
Okay.
So yeah, just amazing that there was a station across the street from this bank where this occurs called CJRL, and the guys in the booth were like hockey announcers watching this thing. It was like the good old hockey game.
We've spoken to a number of people on the street who allegedly saw this take place, and it was just one smooth operation, walking into the bank, ordering the tellers out, and from there, nobody seems to know what's going on because the man is holed up in the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and the police have been negotiating with the man. The area has been cordoned off. The passers-by again have been moved back further, and they're just waiting now to see what happens. As I mentioned, the man is holding what is believed to be a device in his mouth, and from all reports, it would appear as though it's a bomb of some sort.
And it ends in such spectacular, bizarre, and horrific fashion that the whole thing is broadcast live. We'll get into it here, but let's go through it chronologically. We're going to start with the mystery man arriving in the small town of Kenora. I think this is the best way to go through it because they don't believe, of course, we don't know who the man involved in this story is. It's not believed that he's from Kenora. And looking at all of the information that came out, it seems that he arrived there a couple weeks before the bank robbery. It was in late April of 1973. He's a 40 to 50-ish year old man, had a beard, red hair. He arrived in Kenora and checked into a hotel that's not very far from the bank that he would eventually rob. He checked in under the name of Paul Higgins, and he gave them an address in Toronto. He said that's where he was from. Yeah. As far as luggage, he had what's referred to, I think they called it a steam box, which to me looks like a treasure chest.
Yeah, same. I think it was yellow. Another thing about him, like he had a reddish beard, he had a fedora, and he had that chest. He gets off the train. The train, by the way, you and I were talking about like a Stephen King-esque town before we started here, and Kenora is definitely one of those towns. The train kind of rolls into town all through it, and it curves in around it like a snake. And he gets off that train. He's got that luggage case, and
A steamer trunk, I
steamer
think, is
trunk.
what they refer to it.
He needed
But
help with it. Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I Googled it, and it looks like a treasure chest. It looks like something you would, you buy a house, and the prior people cleared out all their stuff, but there's this trunk up in the attic,
Yeah.
full of old sheets or something. But that's what he's traveling with. It just seems, even in 1973, it seems like an unconventional thing to travel with.
By himself with this thing where he needs people to help him lug it into the taxi cab even. And the cab driver was French Canadian, as I recall. I read the book. The book is by Joe Ralco called The Devil's Gap. I'll shout it out right away before I forget. So I'll sound like at times that I wrote the book, but I only read it recently. And the French Canadian taxi cab driver, I don't want to get ahead of you, but he immediately recognizes him as maybe having a French Canadian accent, he thought, but that I think he thought that because he has one and it was close to his, but it was more Germanic or Dutch, something like that.
Yeah, but I think everybody who encountered this man, who we'll, I guess, now call Paul Higgins, have described him as being kind of a mild-mannered guy with a little bit of an accent, be it maybe German, maybe French, but something not of
that area.
Kenora.
No.
Yes. So he arrives in town in Kenora. He checks into the Kenritzia Hotel.
Kenritzia, I believe.
For the first week or so that he's in Kenora, he spends about 5 days there when he first arrives. He just kind of lives a regular kind of life. He's roaming around town, keeping a pretty regular schedule. There's one coffee shop in particular. I think every day he would go and sit in the same seat for like an hour and a half, sipping on a coffee.
Absolutely. It was called the Plaza. It's not there anymore because I wanted to go eat breakfast there myself, but I wasn't able to. And he would do something very odd. He would sit, so there was a big window that would face the street of downtown Kenora, and he would sit with his back to that window facing the entire crowd as if he wanted to be seen. And they think that he wore a plaid jacket that was pink. They were calling him Pinky because of that. And he had a fedora and he had a reddish beard. And people are like, well, it's amazing he wasn't trying to disguise himself. To me, if you have a beard, a big ruddy beard like he had in a fedora and this jacket that he's kind of drawing attention away from you with, you do something like this and you go shave your beard. That was a disguise, man. And you take that fedora off. You ever seen a guy shave his beard who has a big ruddy beard? You can't recognize that guy afterwards.
Yeah, they always look ridiculous. I feel like it's like when a dog gets wet and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you pathetic little thing under there. That's like when a guy shaves his beard every time.
Yeah. He would order the same thing every time too. Ham, eggs, and a black coffee. He was there long enough that the waitress later said that she got to know his order and just said the regular. And he would go, yeah, and he would tip very well. So he stood out, and he was trying to, it seemed, for whatever reason.
Yeah, part of me thinks, as we get to it, part of me thinks he's kind of like scoping out the town and the people, but I guess the motive is going to be a mystery. But all that to say, he's in Kenora for 4 or 5 days, living this kind of life. He then leaves for about 10 days. It's not sure where he went. It's believed he went west, possibly to Winnipeg. He checks out of the hotel, but he does leave behind that steamer trunk. He works it out with the hotel. He says, I'm going for a while, but I'm going to be back. Can you look after this trunk for me? They agreed to that. So he was gone for about 10 days before he came back to Kenora, checked into a room and got the trunk back. But do you know anything about his time leaving? What the hell did he do?
He got in a bus and he went north to a mining encampment, acting like he was going to go for work, but he just went there and stole the dynamite that he would later use for his device from that camp. It was thought.
Oh, he did. Okay, 'cause I thought it was like speculated that that's maybe when he accumulated the dynamite, because that is a controlled item. You can't just go buy dynamite at Walmart.
He stole it from that mining camp. That's what he spent the 10 days. He also spent time looking around the area, trying to figure out places probably to escape from after he did this robbery, because he was a survivalist. He had all these survival booklets and stuff we'll get into. But I think he was scoping out where he was. He checked out the airport. He did a tour on a boat. That's Lake of the Woods, right? There's a lot of lakes around there. You can get lost in those lakes out there.
Hell yeah.
But one of the main things that the author, Joe Ralco, thinks in The Devil's Gap, the book, is that he went up to this mining camp and stole the dynamite. You see, there's mining towns. This town, Kenora, at the time was a a sawmill, town. And it stinks, dude. Like those sawmill towns, and Dryden is right by there. It was a pulp mill town because they use sulfur for breaking down the.
It's disgusting. There's a pulp, or I think it's closed now, but there's a pulp mill in Nova Scotia that I pass by when I'm on my way to my hometown, and it's for 25 minutes of the drive. It just smells like a public bathroom.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. So those 10 days, it's thought that he went and got dynamite. He also scoped out this surrounding area and was trying to figure out ways to make his getaway. And I think his getaway would have been to escape to the woods.
It makes sense. We're about to get into the bank robbery, which happens the early afternoon on May 10th of 1973. Before we get into him walking into the CIBC in Kenora, let's take a break. When we get back, we'll go through the crazy stuff that happens in that bank, in and outside of that bank.
I'd love a break. I'm going to drink some of this Datta.
So the town of Kenora will forever change just before 3 p.m. on May 10th of 1973. So this mystery man who was using the alias Paul Higgins has now been back in Kenora for 2 or 3 days after this adventure to nowhere, which may involve stealing dynamite. But all the trouble starts, again, just before 3 on May 10th. Carrying a couple bags, I think he has 2 or 3 duffel bags with him. He walks into the CIBC branch in downtown Kenora, doesn't approach a teller, which is what I thought a bank robber would normally do. He must have understood the bank enough that he walked directly into the manager's office. The bank branch manager sitting in his office on the phone when this Paul Higgins fella walks in with a couple duffel bags and 2 guns. I think he had a pistol and a rifle?
Yep, he had a pistol and a rifle. It was like an Italian pistol. Like they were very specific, and the rifle was an old British rifle. And the duffel bags were empty. Obviously, he was going to fill them up. This bank manager's name is Al Reed, I recall. Yeah. He smoked a pipe. That's where I remember him.
It's an old-fashioned bank manager smoking a pipe.
Yeah.
He had probably a liquor cabinet in the corner of his office.
Yes. And a completely unordinary robbery where he doesn't go to the teller, like a lot of people will say actually in other accounts when you watch YouTube videos and stuff like that. It's not true. He walks right into the manager's office, Al Reed, and you can tell him what happens next.
Well, he walks into the manager's office, and in a calm, not frantic or aggressive tone or anything, he explains to the manager what's happening. He said, I'm here to rob the place. I have dynamite in my bag. I have a device, and he explains a device he has, which is the best way to describe it is it's like a clothespin. You put the clothespin in your mouth and you bite down on it so the other end opens up. And he says, when that device is in my mouth and I bite down on it, it won't set off the bomb until I open my mouth and the device closes. He calls it, I think they call it a dead man switch. So it's so it's something he's going to put in his mouth that will arm the bomb. And so long as his mouth stays shut the whole time, and people aren't going to blow up. What he tells the manager is, I want the money put into these bags. You get a couple staff members to help me put it in the bag. And I also want a police escort to get me out of here. So I want you to call the police. Tell them to send someone down here, send a vehicle down here, because when I get all the money, I'm gonna get them to drive me out of town.
Absolutely, and
it's pretty simple demand, although it is crazy.
It is. It seems crazy to the bank manager Al Reed because he's already hit the silent alarm. There's a silent alarm, and then Higgins here asks him to call the police. He's like, oh, Christ. Like, why would he want me to call the police?
Which is unusual. When you rob a bank, it's always like, don't press the button. Don't tell anyone until I'm long gone. No, he's like, you get the police down here.
Yeah.
Because I need them to
do whatever you
me.
want. Yeah. Yes. It's a hard place to get out of. Mm-hmm. This is like a very difficult place to make your escape from, which we could talk about later as well. But it's almost impossible to get out of considering what he's about to do. Mm-hmm. It's surprising the way that he went about it, but there's a lot more to it. One thing I should mention is that he has an egg timer in that bag that's ticking very loudly.
Oh, God.
That has nothing to do with the device. It's a ruse. It's just something extra theater for him to scare that bank manager into thinking, hey, this is for real. Because really, it's just the dead man switch in his mouth like a clothes peg that he's clamped between his teeth, Once he lets that go, like you said, it will detonate the device that is attached to batteries, which will create a spark, which will light a fuse that is attached to the dynamite.
So he has like a bag of dynamite with the wires coming out of it going into this device that after he tells the bank manager what he's going to do, he pulls a balaclava over his head.
Yes.
Puts the device in his mouth. So
yes. And there's a hole in the mouth for it too. You know what's great about that situation? I mean, not great, but very interesting is that once he puts that into his mouth and clamps his teeth down, what he's effectively saying as well is there's no more talking here. If I talk, this thing's going to explode.
Yeah, and it's also you can't get the mask off either because when he pulls the balaclava over his head and puts his hat back on. So he has the hat with the balaclava. Then he puts the device in his mouth. So that kind of locks the balaclava on his face so people can't see him. It also makes it so that he can't talk. He does give permission to let the staff of the bank go. I think one bank employee stayed behind to help gather the loot. The manager, Al Reed, stays in with them. And it's not long after that the police arrive. They start setting up shop outside of the bank, and they send a plainclothes officer inside to escort Mr. Higgins to the car that they will send. I think they sent a van down that they were going to get him out of there in.
Well, there's one other thing. So first he invites some of the police in and he has them line up about 4 cops and says for them each to take a look in his bag and confirm that this is a real bomb. He wants 4 people to understand that this is a real bomb. And it is. They're all like, holy shit, like this is a real bomb. And then they leave, but one officer stays behind. He wants him to stay along with that bank teller and I think it's Al Reed to help with the money and the unlocking of the safe and all that stuff.
And now we talked a little bit about the fact that there is a radio station right across the street. When police start setting up a roadblock basically outside of a radio station, the radio station takes notice and starts talking about it. So there's many clips of the radio station announcers doing this almost play-by-play of the bank robbery in progress. They're talking about what's happening on the street. Slowly a crowd is gathering, but the crowd gets bigger and bigger and bigger as all this goes on. And this only plays out within about an hour. But to say it creates almost like the circus vibe on the street is an understatement. It's so bad. And one of my favorite stories about all of this is just a couple doors down from the bank is this pub or this bar. And it's so crazy what's going on that one guy at the bar or at the pub thinks, I'm going to put an end to this. A drunk guy. And he just leaves the bar, walks down the street, walks right into the branch as the robbery is in progress and confronts Paul Higgins. And Paul Higgins pulls out his gun. And this is the only time he was violent. He pulled out his gun and I don't know if they were warning shots, but he shot a couple shots at the ground between the guy's legs, the drunk guy that showed up.
I think his name was Kenora John, but I could be getting him mixed up with the fisherman that was down there. I've never been clear on that, but there was a guy named Kenora John who was involved in this, and it might have been him. But yeah, he was playing pool at the bar, exactly as you said, and when he made the shots at his feet, made him dance, he danced right out of the bank.
Right out of the bank.
And did you see one of his relatives later was interviewed? It was one of his nephews, and he said, we didn't see him for a week.
My uncle, he was drinking at the time. And I don't know how he got in here because the police and that were all at the doors. I guess that's when bank robber fired 2 warning shots at him. One, I think, went in between his legs and one on the other side.
What did your uncle think of that?
He was gone. We never seen him for about a week later. I don't know where he went, but he was gone, scaredless.
Well, I think this guy was probably in the middle of a bender. I think regardless of what happened at this bank, you probably weren't going to see him for a few days. I think it's just a statement to how ridiculous this is. And it's also a statement to how little control the police had over the scene. That someone can walk in when there's like a hostage situation, there's a bomb.
It was all messed up. I mean, it was small town cops. And I don't want to take anything away from, I should, really. They didn't do a good job.
They're heavily criticized for their handling of this, and to this day, it's still taboo to ask questions to authority.
They won't
in Kenora about their handling. They don't want nothing to do with this story.
No, and I don't know if you were going to mention it, but all the people coming down to witness this event because of the radio station across the street, CJRL, saying don't come downtown. They think about 30 to 50% of the town came down. It was over. It was like 2,000 people that were down there. And the cops would push them back, and they were just kind of crowding in to see. Remember they said that parents were taking their kids out of school and bringing their kids down to see the event.
And it sounds so nuts, but that did happen. They were playing it, and so I think one class, the teacher had a radio set up. They were listening to it. Other people, just as you said, were picking up their kids and going down there as if it was like a community event. A significant percentage of the community was there outside watching this whole hostage situation with the bomb in the bank play out. There's a lot of photographs and videos of it as well. And it is huge crowds. If you saw the crowd and you didn't realize there were cop cars and a bank and all this stuff, you would have thought it was like, maybe it was the town's anniversary and there's a concert about to happen and there's going to be fireworks tonight. That's what it looked like and probably felt like. People, I don't think, realize how dangerous it was and how bad it was going to go.
Oh my God.
Let's get to that part. So it's about 40 minutes after he goes in and puts the dead man's switch in his mouth with the balaclava on that the cops arrive with a pickup truck, a driver who is a cop, offering him the safe passage out of town was the plan. It's about 4:12 p.m. that they start making their way out of the bank. So it actually, it takes them 2 tries to get out of the bank. The first time, the police officer, his name is Constable Don Millard. He's the guy who volunteers to take Paul Higgins wherever he wants to go. He's not in uniform. He went plain clothes, thinking that it would maybe make Paul Higgins feel a little better to not have a cop there. But that wasn't the case. When Constable Millard walks into the bank in plain clothes, Paul Higgins was upset by that. It was actually Al Reed, the branch manager, who said, no, this guy's definitely a cop. We're all good.
Yeah. And just as before that happened, it has to be mentioned because they were trying to get the safe open, and he thought, our perpetrator, he thought that Al Reed would be able to open up the cash boxes because the sawmill's payday was the next day. There was the most amount of money that was going to be in that bank on this day because the next day was payroll for the local sawmill. That's why he chose this day. And there was the equivalent of $500,000 in the bank, the most amount of money that would be in that bank at any given time. So when Al Reed goes to, unlock the safe, he's like, wait a minute, I only have half of the code. Our junior employees have the other half, and that is in flux. It changes because those employees change so often, and it's just kind of a safeguard. I have the one code, they have the next. So he ends up saying, figure it out. Our perpetrator says, figure this out. Well, he takes the dead man switch out first like a cigarette and says that. And he calls the Plaza, which is the restaurant where our perpetrator was eating all the time, his eggs and ham. And they find one of the employees there. And they give him the second half of the code, and they effectively open it up that way. So there was a lot going on in that. There was a lot going on in there. The one cop that he kept in there to help, once he finally had enough of him and sent him out, he realized that cop had a revolver still in his back sheath on like a cop belt. And he said, give me your gun. And the cop goes, go to hell. And the cop walked out with his gun. There was so much going on in there. I thought that particular part, that, as I call him, the dead man, didn't notice the revolver until that cop was walking out the door, was interesting because he didn't have as much control over the situation as you might think from most of the retellings of this.
Yeah, in a way, it's all very casual, but it's the police handling of it is what really surprises me, especially this next part, because it's about to get nuts. As they're leaving the bank, he has Paul Higgins, who you're calling the dead man or our perpetrator. He has a couple duffel bags full of something like $100,000 worth of cash. Then he has the other bag with the dynamite strapped to his chest, the wires coming out of it into that weird switch in his mouth, peeking out of his balaclava. It looks like something from a 70s horror movie. Like he looks like a horror movie villain walking out of there.
Yep.
And as they leave the branch into the huge crowd of people and cops, it's the Constable Millard who walks out of the bank first with the perpetrator behind him. The perpetrator realizes he left one of his guns back in the bank.
Yes, his rifle.
Yeah, so he turns around, goes back into the bank and grabs the rifle.
Yep.
Then when they leave the second time, they walk out of the bank and they're walking towards a Dodge pickup truck that's positioned on the street outside of the bank, ready for them to get into and make their getaway. But this is when things go absolutely wrong. And I still, despite every effort I could make, I cannot understand why what happens next happens. So why don't you tell us about this part?
Well, let me mention that Milliard, the plainclothes officer who has been brought in to help out with this, he has all of the money on his back, and it's $100,000, $500,000 today, all over on his back in the duffel bags. He's a big guy, a big tall guy, because the dead man wants to be free, his hands to be free. And he's one more thing to mention before he leaves. This is a trick of the dead man's. He initiates the contact for the bomb. It has not been on that entire time until just before he walks out the door.
Oh, okay.
He only flicks it on then. He's been tricking them that whole time, just in case, he talks or somebody wrestles him and blows them all up. Because he's the only one who knows truly that this is a real bomb. Mm-hmm. So Milliard's walking out with the duffels, and he's supposed to go around the town vehicle that they brought there. It's like a garbage truck, basically. It's like a tank. It's a town truck. And he walks out into the front of the truck. The dead man walks out and turns to the police, who are shouting out to him at that point. And I don't know if you want me to go this far, but they have brought one of their best officers, who's the sharpest shooter of the group.
Let's get right into it, because there's going to be a lot to say, because I don't know why they did this. But
I have an answer for you, but we'll go. I'll give you my answer, and we can talk about that.
Yeah. So keep in mind, there's over 1,000 people on the sides of the street watching this. The radio station is looking out the window, reporting it live on the air that the gunman's out. They're carrying these bags. They're walking to the car. And for reasons that are beyond my imagination, this cop with the great aim that you mentioned took a shot at the man we will refer to as the dead man, or Paul Higgins. They took a shot, and when you get shot, it turns out you're not able to clench your teeth on your dead man switch at the same time.
Yeah.
And the bomb was real. They see it for sure. It's real when he explodes in front of the bank.
The man is coming out. He's got a black stocking on his head. He's got 3 duffel bags, apparently full with money. It's the clothes peg in his mouth. He is carrying a flight bag The bomb has gone off. A bomb has gone off. He's been shot. Stay back. Windows have been blown out. There's debris. There are pieces of clothing and blood.
The policeman who is with the man appears to be not too badly injured. At least he's able to stand up. The bank robber, one could only assume that whoever he is no more. The money is all over the place. The police are keeping well control of it, keeping the people back. Obviously, this money has to be scooped up and accounted for. The Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce is, the front of it is, all the windows are blown out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's an experience which not many people wish to go through again. This indeed will be a Thursday that the town of Kenora will not forget in a hurry.
He shot him right through the heart. This wasn't a rifle he was accustomed to either. So initially, I thought that was a silly move. I thought that was like a little jumping the gun, so to speak.
Yeah, it's absolutely jumping the gun. Why would you? He has a bomb. Why would they shoot him in the chest outside of the bank?
Here's the thing. They realized, and I realized this later after talking to people in Kenora about it, because I interviewed a few people. Like, I didn't take it all down like a reporter or anything, but I talked to people about this, and it was explained to me that when he left the building and turned, and Milliard was walking around the vehicle, he was protected, and the dead man was stuck between the bank, which was a big brick building, heavily reinforced building, and that vehicle. All these people around, they figured taking the shot on him right there, bomb or not, was their best chance at finishing the situation, because if they allowed him to get into that vehicle, The streets were clogged up. Remember I said that this is the Trans-Canada Highway? It has been blocked off during this whole situation for hours. And now there are like trucks and people in their RVs and stuff blocking that road from either side. So to allow him into that vehicle with Milliard with the money and try to navigate their way through all this stuff, they knew it was going to end in a shootout and more people potentially dying when he did explode. They thought this was their... And guess what? It turned out to be the best opportunity because he was the only one who died.
Yeah, that's right. The Constable Millard, who did get injured in this, he fell to the ground.
Yes.
His clothes were partially torn off. He was certainly injured. I think I think he's still deaf in one ear as a result of this.
You're right.
He retired, I think, a month after this as a result of the trauma and some of the injuries.
He was a young guy too.
And the blast was so bad. This one story and this one detail I find disturbing, but it explains it, is that Constable Millard fell to the ground kind of on his knees, sort of in a fetal position with his hands around his stomach. And he looked down at himself and he saw that he was holding like guts. The other cops kind of came running to check on him and he thought his belly was blown open. But when he opened up his arms more, he realized it was remains of Paul Higgins that just splattered against him, and he thought it was his own chest.
He was holding Paul Higgins' guts, not his own. That's you can see it in the video too, him knelt over holding himself like that.
Yeah, he's just holding a chunk of Paul Higgins, and Paul Higgins is all over the place. When this guy explodes, the money goes flying into the air, so it's raining down on the crowd.
Yeah.
There's smoke everywhere. Glass is shattered everywhere around. And there is just...
all the windows of the buildings blew out, even on the radio station across the street. It was a huge explosion.
Yeah. And there is just remains all over the place. If you look at some of the news reports from 1973 when this happens, you see like his arm is just on the ground in front of the bank. So he blew to pieces. Again, it's reported live on local radio, so it's a horrific end to a bizarre situation. But as you described them shooting him there, it does kind of, I guess I never really thought that there was a lot of risk of him getting in the car with the cop, because if the bomb went off then, of course, that cop's dead. If the bomb goes off when they're leaving and they're near people, there's going to be problems. And they knew it was a real bomb.
There's people everywhere.
Yeah, so I guess...
Jordan, there's people everywhere. Like you said, it's like a rock concert, not just around there, but again, I'll repeat myself. Down the road they were going to go down, whatever road it was packed full of RVs and work trucks and people just trying to get through. There had been a traffic jam on either side of the largest highway in Canada that ran right past that bank at that time.
Yeah, it looked like a parade was starting, or was in the middle of a parade. It was kind of like the style of crowd that was there. But yeah, I guess when I was thinking of this before you presented it that way, I was thinking, why wouldn't they just wait till he was out of the city and try to do something then? But I guess then he has Constable Millard like basically on his lap in this truck.
Also, yeah, exactly. But also he couldn't get out of the city. It was bumper to bumper traffic all around. Yeah. They knew this. It seemed like a crazy shot at the time. I thought that for so long until I talked to people in the town, and they said, no, that guy's a hero.
But Constable Millard, I think, would disagree with a lot of their the police handling of it. He resigned about a month after this, and he was heavily critical of the Kenora Police Department at that time for being unprepared and not having any plan and going into this with just like, we're just going to wing it and see what we can do.
Hey, man.
He had no idea they were going to shoot him, that they were going to shoot the...
Yeah. I mean, he couldn't. Here's the thing. Have you ever heard of a story like this? Ever?
Absolutely not. No. But like this, as far as the explosion or this type of bank robbery?
Sure, the explosion.
Neither.
Sure,
neither.
Like handling that particular situation when you're dealing with it moment to moment. I mean, the guy's coming into the bank. He squares up with the guy who's got the rifle on him. That's your shot. You're buffered by the truck and you're buffered by the bank, and it's only him right there, and he took the shot, man.
Yeah, it just seems so bizarre and unimaginable. But I guess to rob a bank in this way is also like so theatrical. Whatever happened to just going in there like, I got a gun, I'm not even going to show it to you, it's in my pants, just give me the money, because that would work too.
Incredibly odd
to come up with this whole contraption to want a police escort. I can't imagine what he wanted. Maybe he would have wanted them to just drive him and drop him off on the side of the road somewhere, and he'd run into the woods. But to run into the woods with $100,000 in cash is also a problem.
I don't think he thought it completely out. I mean, he thought it out quite a bit. If you ask any of your dumbass friends when you're younger and stuff, how would you rob a bank? They'll come up with all kinds of things. And one of the ideas would be what this guy did from one of my friends. They would
make a bomb in this.
But he got so far, right? And then it was like, oh, Christ, there's a lot of people out here.
Yeah, and so after this happens, the explosion goes off, the money is raining from the sky. What ends up happening is the police maintain order and keep crowds away as police and bank employees run around collecting the cash off of the ground, which is also a bizarre scene. It sounds like they recovered the majority of it.
You know what? They hired local thugs to go and get it back from people who had stolen the money off the street. And they got 90% of the money back. I think they got 95 grand back.
Wow.
A lot of it was blown up as well.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Well, this explosion was like, dynamite is dead serious. This was a big explosion. They ended up finding his pistol. The Paul Higgins, the unknown man, had a pistol on his hip, I believe, very close to where the bag of dynamite was. And I think 10 years after this happened, in the early 80s, there was a deconstruction happening of a building about 3 blocks away. And when they were doing it, they found his bent up and destroyed.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
you can see there's a news clip that showed the pistol, and it was just mangled. It looked like it had been through, I guess, a dynamite explosion. It still had 1 round in the magazine as well, which is interesting.
That's amazing. I mean, there's so much to this story, but I don't, you got to read the book. And people listening, if you want more and all the details of Joe Rocco's book, The Devil's Gap. But he was buried in Kenora, his remains, which we saw slopped all over the street. Remember that one girl you were telling me about that worked at the KFC? Yeah,
that's a great way to describe the scene there. There was an employee of KFC who thought there was chicken everywhere, inexplicably.
Pieces of the robber covered the street for blocks. And maybe it was because she worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, but Paula Eiler saw something else.
I'm thinking, why is there chicken on the street? That doesn't make any sense at all.
You thought you saw chicken on the ground.
Yeah, pieces of chicken, but it wasn't. I think it was pieces of the bank robber.
So you mentioned there he's now buried in a grave in Kenora. Let's take a break, and this will lead to our final segment where we talk about what's known about this guy and what's left to learn about him.
Who is this man who attempted to rob the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce? That's a question which will be answered, I've no doubt, shortly.
So when the dust settles in Kenora, of course the question is going to be, who is this bank robber? Was blown up after a gunshot by the cops in front of the bank. And that is a mystery now that remains unsolved. And I'm kind of surprised that there's very little even known about this guy. They did find his wallet. It had $176 in cash. It had handcuff keys, and it had the receipt for his hotel. And that was really all they were able to learn about from his wallet. But there was some stuff at the hotel, and this is also something that really bothers me, is that steamer trunk we've mentioned several times. That was left behind at the hotel.
Yeah.
But you would think you'd open that up and you'd find all his loot and figure out who this guy is.
Sure.
But they were worried that there was a bomb in it and that it was armed. So what did they do is they blew up his steamer trunk.
Have we blown enough stuff up already? Like, what are they blowing more stuff up? In that room, he had all kinds of beer, they said. All kinds of beer and cigarettes. That's why, I smoke, when I do podcasting. But I'm enjoying this episode so much, smoking and drinking, because I know this guy was in that hotel room smoking and drinking.
Trying to get into his mind?
Yeah. He was smoking and drinking his brains out.
Yeah.
And they found that. And, they blew that treasure chest of his up. And that might have had some information on him, but we'll never know what it said within.
just seems like an extreme solution to blow it up. Is there not a less destructive way to figure out if there's a bomb inside it? But I guess this is 1973. Maybe things were done a little differently then. But there was some other stuff found around his hotel. You mentioned survival gear, that this guy was a bit of a survivalist. They did find quite a bit of like survival gear, maps, which I guess back in the 70s were probably not as uncommon as they are now. He had a lot of maps, and he had what's described simply as items associated with demolition materials, which I can only assume is stuff related to the dynamite.
Yes, he was learning how to wire up that dynamite, I believe. Those maps were of Northern Ontario, of Manitoba, some areas, and of Minnesota, which is just below Kenora. Lake of the Woods, I mean, I'm surprised the states didn't just grab Kenora too and all of Lake of the Woods. Maybe one day they will.
Yeah, that's don't give them any ideas.
Right. Yeah, just anyways.
I'll cut that
part. I'm trying not to be controversial at all, but yeah, man, he had areas where he wanted to bug out to.
Okay,
as they say.
With a lot of cash, though, I guess
like.
if you had enough cash, you could settle down in a small little place and get by. Maybe this was this guy's exit strategy for a life that he was unhappy with. Maybe this was his one last big score, and he was going to just, find a spot in the woods in rural Ontario. But I guess we'll never know. But there has been leads and ideas of who he is, but none have really ever gone anywhere. It seems like when you look at the history, the main kind of suspect of who he was a German man, was reported missing in BC, and they found his truck abandoned in Winnipeg. And of course, our Paul Higgins, the bomber, as we'll call him, he was in Winnipeg during that 10-day gap from Kenora. So it kind of looked like it all would add up.
Yeah.
But they ended up finding family members of the German missing man, and through DNA testing, were able to rule him out.
That makes a little sense to me, because if it's through DNA testing, they've said that they haven't exhumed the grave of whom they call the unknown sleeper in Kenora. If you go to his gravesite in Kenora, he's called the unknown, well, not on the gravesite. They know him locally as the unknown sleeper.
Okay, yeah, I think it's an unmarked grave. Unknown sleeper is not a good name. I like your name, the Dead Man.
The Dead Man,
it's much darker. To call him Paul Higgins, that was the alias he was using. That's a little lame, I think. As far as that address in Toronto, that was a dead end. The address he gave when he checked into the hotel, it wasn't even a valid address.
I know the address too. It was a Glen Drive, I think. I just know the area. He made a lot of stuff up. This guy.
Well, he didn't leave a trail at all. There was fingerprints left behind on several things. None of those matched anything from any kind of police databases, so they were also a dead end. But the big thing now is his body is buried in an unmarked grave. If they really wanted to solve this, if they exhumed his body, it got a good DNA sample through all the genealogical DNA testing and stuff, I'm sure they'd be able to find out who this guy is. It's just, I guess, what is the point if you're going to have to spend all the money on it, other than kind of morbid curiosity? Because we're now 50 years later.
Yeah. I mean, I have a theory that I've never heard anybody bring up. So I live out here, and when I heard about the Germanic accent, possibly Dutch, I was like, there's a lot of guys out here who have that accent, because there's a lot of Hutterites and Mennonites who live out in Manitoba, right near there in Winnipeg, in a place called Steinbach, Winkler, I believe. There are colonies out there where, if you talk to those people, they all have that accent because they've lived in these communes for so long, and they've held on to their heritage because they came over from Germany, from Russia, and they speak it's called Low German and Hutterish. They speak like that, Jordan. If I was to describe them, I would describe them just as these people describe the dead man's accent.
And be kind of outsiders as well. So. Yes. But this guy, like, he's dead, and no one ever came looking for him. So would these be a group of people that wouldn't turn to the RCMP to say, our guy's missing?
No, they're very private people.
So that kind of makes sense, right?
Yes, I think so. They're very private.
for people who don't know the groups you're talking about, it wouldn't be a huge stretch to be like it's kind of like an Amish sort of thing. It's like these people that just do their own thing.
They're not listening to the show right now unless they cranked up a ham radio. Someone, they just they live around me, and they're hardworking people, great people, by the way, to talk to. They'll talk your ear off if you start a conversation with them, but otherwise they are very quiet and humble. They dress like, I shouldn't say this, like scarecrows, kind of like, what a scarecrow wears. I don't mean that. They're not listening anyways. But
they're dressing for function, not fashion.
Yes, absolutely. And all their kids look at you funny, and their horse-drawn carriages come all through my town. And at night, if you drive through their areas, you'll see candles lit all through a whole bunch of houses.
Wow,
it's the coolest thing, man.
Well, I guess in the age of AI and social media, I'm kind of like, are they accepting new members?
Right. But imagine he came from a place like that.
That could make sense. Why would they because what I think of is why would someone choose to do it in this way? Why would they choose Kenora? The accent, of course, is a bit of a mystery, but then, that kind of checks out with your theory. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I
don't know. I don't know, dude.
Yeah, no one knows. And that's why this case is such a mystery. I'm surprised 50 years later, this isn't a more well-known story, because there's so many layers to it. It's so fascinating. The fact that there's video and audio of the whole thing happening in such a shocking way, it just makes for great TV. I think you plugged the book several times there. Also, CTV's W5 did two different specials on it. They did one in 1983. They interviewed the branch manager and a lot of people 10 years after it happened. They did a separate kind of follow-up to that, I think maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, a W5 special. And I'll include links to all this stuff in the episode's description. But for people who want to get a bit deeper, the book you referenced, the 2 W5 specials, they're both great. What I would like to have, though, and I haven't found this released anywhere, is like the full 2 or 3 hours of radio broadcasts.
Oh my God.
I've seen clips. I've heard clips of it, and people listening to the show will have heard some clips by now, but I would like the audio of the whole thing.
I don't know if you will play it, or when people do hear it, my favorite line from those guys across the street doing the play-by-play on this, when the explosion happens, the one reporter says, "Everything is just rancid."
It's a good way to describe it, because it was disturbing. There was blood and guts and cash and smoke everywhere. There's. I just think my favorite part of the radio is just the radio announcer, over and over telling people, "Don't come down here." Nothing is going to make people come down there quicker than don't come down here. I know myself, if I heard that, first place I'm going is down there with my camera.
Yeah, for sure. That's what they did. And there was guys getting hit in the face. He said, the one guy said, "Yeah, I pulled a piece of intestine off my forehead." Another guy saw an arm fly past him. The way they talk about the locals is really funny when they're talking about it. Like, it was just such an event, and they all remember it. They later, locals said it was their 9/11. That was what was happening in Kenora. Everyone was tuned in.
Wow, what a story! But I'm glad to get you on to talk about it. When I started thinking, like, I'm going to do an episode about this, I was happy to see that you had covered it before. I'm like, Jack knows this one. Get you on anytime. But it's for people who are people listening now. They're like, this Jack Luna guy's all right. How do they find Dark Topic? What episode or story would you recommend a new listener to start with?
The Dead Man on Dark Topic. The Dead Man. Why not? Why not come over and listen to The Dead Man? You'll learn a lot about me through that episode, because that was my journey back to go see where my dad had lived and where he'd passed away in really heinous circumstances, criminal circumstances. And I talk a lot about that on there. You'll get to know as much as you want to know about me on that episode that has a lot to do with this case.
Yeah.
I mean, everything to do with this case.
And that's something, we talked a little bit about Dark Topic earlier, but that's something you do, is you tell a story and people come for the story, but just in your telling, you express your life and your kind of views of the world, for better or worse, when you tell the story. So it's like when you go to Dark Topic, you get like the dark topic that you came for, but you also get a whole lot of dark Jack Luna thrown in. And go check out The Dead Man and see which episode on this story you like better, the Canadian Gothic or the Dark Topic one.
Oh, let's compete. Sure. That sounds good. I enjoyed this one more, I'll tell you that. Oh, yeah. I like this one.
The jury's out. We'll see. But Jack, we got to do this more. I always enjoy. We did Rocky Rambo Waynam Cam several years ago. That was a great episode to do together. But we should do something again sometime soon.
I would love to, man. I love your show. I love being on it. I love you, and can't wait for the next time, man. I'm sorry that it ended. I'm sorry he got blown up, man. I wish that he was still marauding through the Northern Ontario wilderness, and we were still talking about it, but unfortunately, it came to an end.
I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the Canadian Gothic. I've added several links in this episode's description to the other content related to the Kenora robbery that we mentioned during our discussion. It's a wild story indeed, and it's pretty amazing that no one, well, other than the mystery man, got killed in all this. And with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up the episode, but before we part, let me end with some thanks. First, a big thanks to Jack Luna for joining us here on the Canadian Gothic. A big thanks to Monty Datta, who contributes the music for this episode, and Linz from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides my intro and outro voiceovers. But then lastly, and most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to each and every one of you listening to the Canadian Gothic. Without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. And on the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Kendall, Mary, and Melissa, we appreciate you. If anyone else would like to support the show, you can help us out here in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a back catalog of episodes. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium at thecanadiangothic.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know that you listen. Your support is very much appreciated. And until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let us know if you see anything weird.
Thank you for listening to Canadian Gothic.
The policeman who is with the man appears to be not too badly injured. He has stomach wounds.
Despite what the radio announcer thought, police officer Don Millyard's stomach wound was not what it seemed.
He's on his knees, holding his stomach.
He's holding flesh and blood that he thinks is himself, but it's actually part of the robber. And he only acknowledges that when one of the constables says, "Don, that's not part of you."